This week, Josh waxes whatever he wants and then talks about Riot layoffs. Nick waxes poetic under the high salt sun about caves of Cud. Then Doom enters the blockchain and Palworld.
Nick here with a dram of water. Live and drink, friend.
Hi, I'm Josh, and remember, the only thing that can stop a bad Pokemon is a good Pokemon with a gun.
I'm Andy, and this is Video Game Tango. Welcome back, everybody!
Yes.
Greetings.
Last week we had that McDonald's internet that was really slow.
That McDonald's internet.
McDonald's.
Slowing us down.
I got that Scottish countryside internet.
We were victims of the Great Pacific Northwest internet outage from Spectrum last week. Thank you so much, Spectrum.
If the internet had been out for one more day, I was going to start purging.
Realistically, it was the weather, but in my head, Charter just decided to transfer packets via crab.
Yeah.
They just had a long chain of crabs transferring literal digital packets.
That is about as fast as my internet was when it worked for
I
a
couldn't
couple
even
days.
get 4G because everyone switched over to their phone because the internet's not working. It's like, I can't
No,
even.
I couldn't open up Adobe Premiere because it was trying to
call home.
To call home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, ah. So like I couldn't even get any good editing done while I was done. And just to put the fucking cherry on top, the internet dropped the first 2 nights, like right as I finished eating and I was ready to get to fucking work, you know? So God.
Yeah,
Weather, man, it does a number on.
Yeah, it felt like it was planned. It was like, oh, good, the internet's only off when I want to recreationally use it.
Yes.
And as it turns out, my entire life functions around the internet. That was a fun discovery.
No, so I watched some Sopranos at really bad 4G speeds, and so I watch it in like 2p. You know, there was like 2 pixels. Fortunately,
Love how your go-to when the internet slows, like, I guess I'll watch Sopranos.
yeah, dude, I fuck yes.
Back to the 90s,
you
baby.
can do with low internet. You're like, I'm gonna try to stream an old TV.
I'm so glad I did too, because I am hooked. I'm watching Sopranos on my break because I can't get enough right now. I fucking love that show.
Now I might be a little bit.
I can't talk shit.
I might be a little late to this game, but I'm watching Sopranos for the first time, and it's pretty good TV.
I am so envious
If you
of
haven't
you.
seen it,
Upfront and honest, I have not watched it, but all I know is that it's an amazing show.
Yeah,
a lot of
incredible.
people were upset with the ending, but it sounds like, from what I know of the ending, it's
a great
How do
ending.
you end a show like that, right? You can't just like wrap shit up.
It's as
right?
good of an ending as any other
Exactly.
like great show ended on. Like it really,
except for Dark
was
Tower,
fine.
worst ending.
Well,
Throwing it out there.
we were talking about great shows.
I know.
Yeah. So
Video games.
video
Hey,
games.
we're gonna be talking about a little bit of. We mentioned it already in the intro.
We're
but
going to talk
Palworld-
about a really popular game.
But you gotta, if
We're
you want
gonna talk
Palworld, you're gonna have to stick around for a little bit.
Yeah, you're gonna have to
we're gonna have to
bullshit
wade
first.
Be
through
a
a
pal.
little bit. And unfortunately, guys, I'm gonna open with a little bit of bad news here. The layoffs that I already talked about in the podcast a couple weeks ago are continuing. Riot Games has announced Monday that it is going to be laying off 530 workers.
God, that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, and it actually constitutes 11% of their global workforce. So it is a sizable portion. Now, in a letter to the staff, Chief Executive Dylan J. I'm not even going to pronounce it.
Dylan J.
The CEO called the move a decision we hoped we would never have to make. The biggest hit would be to teams outside of core development. He says, to all the rioters who are being laid off, we are deeply sorry that it has come to this. As the CEO, I'm accountable for the changes we're making and where we're headed in the future. Now,
Corpo chatter, dude.
it is corpo chatter. Definitely corpo chatter. Now, so what he's saying here is, he says further on, our costs have grown to the point where they're unsustainable. We've left ourselves no room for experimentation or failure, which is vital to a creative company like ours. He said, all of this puts the core of our business at risk. So as part of the cuts, the company has announced that it is going to be sunsetting Riot Forge, which is where third-party developers get to use some of Riot's IP to develop side games and whatnot. Riot is, of course, the developer of League of Legends and the super acclaimed Arcane. I mean, the show Arcane. Everybody loved that. It came out of Riot Studios. Now, employees are going to be receiving a pretty nice severance. They're going to be getting 6 months of pay, so that is nice.
Not nothing.
It's
No,
not
that is
nothing.
No, that's better than most severance.
I was going to say it's better than a lot of places come from. Now, he finally said a decision like this has a massive impact on people's lives and on the culture of Riot. We're not doing this to appease shareholders or hit some quarterly earnings number. We've made this decision because it's a necessity. Now, I actually did a little further research into Jadeja. That's probably not it, but the CEO of Riot. Before this, he actually worked at Goldman Sachs, where
we're sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of corpo talk. He used to work at Goldman Sachs, where he did shareholder. He took care of shareholders. He was doing Fortune 500 companies and middle markets. So it was definitely a corpo shark job that he did before this. So I don't know. He's been there for a while though, since 2014. So I don't know. I just hate to see already more jobs being cut in the game industry, especially at Riot, where I'm really looking forward to Arcane Season 2. I've considered playing League of Legends. I mean, people have told me I would like it. So it kind of sucks to see.
If it makes you feel better, Arcane was developed by an animation studio.
Yeah.
That has the rights at least to them from Riot.
Oh, okay.
Riot is not the people making the animation.
That's okay.
They just hold the IP because they made the game.
That's okay. Right. Okay.
So,
as far as we know, they are in charge of story and stuff. But yeah, as far as
I'm sure they have input and whatnot. But it's Riot could fire everyone but one employee, and Arcane Season 2 is still going to be being made because technically it's a different company, right?
Yeah.
I honestly, I think the biggest part that's going to really affect, besides the people losing their jobs, that's obviously the most effect, is their sunsetting of Riot Forge, because there's a lot of third party and smaller scale developers that were able to use some of Riot's IP to put out games and stuff. So that's actually gonna, I feel like it's gonna hurt jobs across a wider market than just the 530 people that are being let go, honestly.
I'm not too familiar with Riot Forge, other than it seems like it is a subsidiary of Riot Games, meaning that all the games made by Riot Forge are games set in the League of Legends universe, but are not League of Legends.
Yeah.
Right? Songs of Nunu, Mage Seeker, Convergence, Rune King, Hextech Mayhem. These are all League of Legends games, but they're not.
Right? They're not League of Legends, proper.
I have so much to say about MOBAs because I've played all of them, and I've played a lot of them. And I don't think League of Legends is going anywhere anytime soon.
Oh, no.
500 employees, 11%, that's a lot of people. But what I see, especially in the fucking Gish Gallop that you were talking about, the apologies and whatnot, this isn't anything new. We're essentially breathing air here. A company gets big and makes a good thing, and then they bring in an expert, which is what the CEO is. Maybe not as fucking hatchet as Bobby Kotick, but their job is to make money for the shareholders.
Yeah.
It's we don't need 500. What you said, writers or people related to writing.
Well, no, he said rioters.
Yeah. Oh, rioters. Okay. Yeah. So we've already made the game. What can we do to cut money now? Even if this means 2 to 5 to 10 years from now, our IP starts sucking ass, that won't matter because this CEO won't be working for this company anymore. He's going to show up, work for 5, 7, 8 years, and then move to a different company after he's gutted it to make short-term profits. This happens all the time in every industry. Yeah. This is not just video games. They show up, they help the shareholders, they get short-term profits, and they leave to another company. So, anger rant aside, it sucks that it's happening. At the very least, 6 months fucking severance package.
That is nice. That is something,
right?
The biggest issue you have here is that everybody is cutting off, laying people off like this, and it is probably going to be pretty hard for these guys to find jobs right away because normally Riot, they just go to Blizzard. They just go to Riot. You know, they would go to similarly sized ventures where all of these places are doing mass layoffs at the moment. So right now, it's not a great time to be a person in the games industry, especially, you know, lower level dev, writer, you know, that kind of thing, artist. It's difficult times, but it probably is temporary. Like right now, you see this in waves, right? There will be these mass hirings and these mass layoffs, and all the companies seem to do them around the same time. And a lot of it is just reactionary. It's these board members discussing with other board members what's happening in their campus, and then, you know, that leads to layoffs in another campus, leads to layoffs in another campus, et cetera. And right now, you know, the winds of change are blowing, and we're seeing AI being incorporated, and et cetera. And these game companies are looking at trying to reduce their overhead. That's usually fairly temporary. Unfortunately, these mass layoffs and hirings, they happen in a couple year rotation.
I was gonna say on a smaller scale, like we're after the holidays.
Yeah,
like, you know, the economy's not great, so, you know, we're not in Bill Clinton's era.
Yeah,
we're vaguely post COVID. Shit sucks, and it's like the holidays have always been kind of traditionally bad for gaming until Christmas hits, and then once Christmas is over, there's a dearth in the early year, right? So I have all this chaff when you can fire them, come up with a new game, or work on whatever yearly title you're doing if you're fucking Ubisoft or Activision or whatever. And when then it comes time to do the crunch, you hire a bunch of people to get the grunt work done, and then you just fire them again at the end of the year.
Yeah, and while the games industry has been relatively immune to this kind of cycle versus other industries, it's just right now, it's really unfortunate, but we are in a post-COVID world where these companies were hiring en masse during COVID to try and pump out as many games as possible and really leverage the pandemic. With all of the stay-at-home work and all of the businesses and that were shut down and the furloughs that were happening, they were really trying to capitalize on, let's get some games out during this period, because the games industry, I don't know, if you've been watching earnings, went fucking hard 2020, 2021, and 2022. Yeah. The sales for video games were just absolutely insane. And those kinds of sales had never been heard of previously. Everything was a AAA at the time, and they were making AAA sales. And that's because more people were at home than ever. You know, you didn't have access to the outside world for a long time. And in those 3 years, they hired just an immense amount of people with no preparation, no thought of looking forward to when inevitably the pandemic would end, or at least the stay-at-home mandates would end. And then people left their houses. You know, like the first year that we really started to see the lift on the stay-at-home orders, people were everywhere except for their own homes. So to see a sudden, like an extreme dip in sales like that, they were going to have to make cuts somewhere, and the cuts were going to be in the mass hiring they had done over the last 3 years. So it's sad. Yeah, I'm not saying it's okay or it's good. Obviously it's not, and it sucks that, you know, the short-sightedness of an industry like this is seeing mass layoffs like this, but it also, I mean, it was already written in the sand. So, I mean,
to me, the trend continuing is a little bit frightening, because last year in 2023 we faced around 10,000 job losses in the industry as a whole across it. We're already approaching 3,000, and we're not out of January.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, we're already at a third of that number in 1/12 the time. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
The majority of them are still going to be at the beginning of the year. So fortunately, it's likely that the layoffs will slow. They probably won't stop, but they'll probably slow pretty significantly.
Also, to remember, a lot of this is AA and AAA game devs.
Yeah,
like it's a different world than indie shit. Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, maybe some of these guys will form their own indie companies and stuff like that. And I mean, you know, hopefully
I'm sure plenty will. And you know, I look forward to the games they put out. I wish everybody well. I hope everybody realizes that it's not because of the job that you've done. It's just the business pushing you out, because that's what business does. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Well, aside from additional layoffs, Nick, you've been playing something this week that is really interesting.
It's so hard to find the right words to open my discussion of what this game is. So every once in a while, every gamer is going to play a game that they feel is iconic. Not in a sense of like this started a genre or this was the best of the year, but this game stands alone in a realm of its own making that is so far removed from other games that it is a singular experience. These are games like Dwarf Fortress. These are games like, I don't know, what else can we think of that are game like World of Warcraft in its heyday, VR chat in its early days, things where it's like, if you were there when it was a thing and that was a formative experience for you, you're like, nothing's ever going to top that feeling.
Yeah.
This game, Caves of Cud, is in that echelon. Now, there's a lot of stipulations to that, and I'll get to that. But what Caves of Cud is a science fantasy lore builder's paradise. This is a fully realized world, both by handwritten narrative and deeply complex procedural generation, that allows for a set and setting that you really don't see much anymore. And a lot of people, especially in this generation, are very familiar with science fantasy. But what comes to mind is the 1950s and 60s schlock of that kind of glut of fantasy of that era. But I want you to think Dune. I want you to think Star Wars. I want you to think Ursula Gwynn. This is a game that has found a way to diegetically kind of mix the ideas of fantasy and sci-fi in a way that makes sense. And not only on top of that, the vast majority of it is procedurally generated, and you still find a way to make it make sense. So what is this game? Caves of Cud, no one's entirely sure, is a game that is set in the far post-apocalyptic world of the remnants of the seventh sultan of the Cataphaisans. You're pretty sure it's Earth. You're not entirely sure. But you create a character like you do in any other RPG. And you can start as either a mutant or a truekin. With truekin are like cyborg androids, and mutants are creatures that gain all kinds of mutations that you can think of. Extra limbs, extra, heads. You can dominate people's minds. You can have pyrokinesis. So right off the bat, this game is telling you, like, here are the two main choices, and they're already bonkers wild, right? Have all kinds of implants and crazy stuff, or have all kinds of mutant powers. And you're going to be fighting like the equivalent of goblins to start and whatnot. But they're weird mutated dog people. And sometimes they have rifles and sometimes they have stone spears, right? By mid-game, you've got point defense drones and Crysteel full plate armor and a visor that tells you the temperature of enemies, and this amazing mix of sci-fi and fantasy that is so rarely done anymore because it's dangerously difficult to do because it usually doesn't feel good, right? People want their science and their hard science fiction and their fantasy and their fantasy. But Caves of Cud has found a way to do this, and it helps that the game has been out since like 2015. It's had almost a decade of production with what's called a feature Friday. Almost every single Friday, they've had some update to the game for almost 10 years now.
Damn.
And I picked it up years ago, but I didn't let it hook me. I started it and I was like, the UI and the UX is rough, and I'm okay with that. Like, I've played a lot of Dwarf Fortress. I've played a lot of Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, Tales of Magi, all these actual roguelike games, not roguelite. But since then, with the Creatures of the Seventh Plague major update that came out last November, I wasn't aware that it happened, but I just recently decided to reinstall Caves of Cud and play through it. And they've had a major UI update and a lot of key binding, remapping options, a lot of quality of life features that have made the game very, very, very playable. I don't even know where to really begin, so I'm going to quote some sections of a famous Something Awful forum review of the game. And this review came out 8 years ago. So this is old content, right? Here's just a short list of some of the things you can do in the game. You can get killed by angry mutant plants. You can get killed by angry mutant animals. You can kill an entire bear and then eat it. You can fight a giant drill robot with a knife and win. You can turn a plastic tree and a folding chair into an acid grenade. You can collect magma in a canteen and then drink it. You can telepathically locate an enemy and hate it to death with your terrifying brain sorcery. If you so wish, you can encounter your evil twin through paracausality, summon 6 of your own good twins to fight your evil twin 6 twins in a 14-way psychic laser death rave, and then burn to death when the screen combusts in a pyrokinetic mind fire from all the time clones. That's normal stuff in Caves of Cud. You feel like you can... Once you get the hang of the game, you feel like I'm unstoppable. My character has 6 arms. He's wielding vibro axes in each one of them. I have an Eigen rifle that pierces enemies. I have a force field. I can predict the future, and if the timeline doesn't go the way I want, I can reset back to the start.
Except you didn't count on Optimus Prime as a lich.
Exactly. Or you didn't count on the fact that there's creatures out there that can just steal your memories or remove your face or break the fourth wall. There's a certain creature that...
Motherfucker just turns your computer off?
There's an ability called precognition. You can activate when it's off cooldown. What it means is for the next so many turns, depending on your level of the power, at any point in time, up including the end, you can just revert back to when you started the power. You literally are just viewing like a multiverse fractal of time, and you'd be like, I'm going to try going to this room, and if it's too dangerous, I'll rewind time. How do you lose, right? Well, you piss off highly entropic beings by misabusing it. Like, this game is Noita taken to the nth level, right? Noita makes you feel amazing. You have these magic wands as a wizard. It's like, how can I lose? I've got a nuclear bomb on rapid fire. But then you still find a way to die, right? What makes this game even better is that although they have the traditional roguelike experience of, as you're learning the game, you're going to encounter random shit. It's going to kill you. You're going to die a million times. There is a role play mode now where every time you enter a safe village, it just saves the game. And if you die, you go back to the village. That makes this game accessible to a genre of players that normally avoids this type of game, right? I really feel that there is a good loop in your first night or two of playing where you're playing the classic mode, you're playing until you die, so that you get an idea that this is a game that is built like an old school Renaissance D&D campaign. The world is not there contrived for you. You are in the world of CUD, and if you are not careful, if you are not efficient, if you are not planning ahead for the future, you are going to get got by a bug that just drains your ego, right? You have an ego death from a bug. That happens in the game.
Jiminy Cricket has come to collect, motherfucker.
And being a roguelike, it has so many amazing elements. Like the idea of you can transfer your mind into a pig and then put an ounce of like the matter that makes up a neutron star into its mouth in a magnetically held container and send it as a suicide bomb to kill a religious Templar who believes that the machine god is coming back. Like, that's something you can do in the first hour of the game. It's crazy how much content is in this game. I'd say roughly 20% of it is handwritten, right? There is a storyline. There are quests to do. And with this 7th Plague update, this is the last major update before the full final release of the game. The full storyline is going to be done. I've been playing it pretty much nonstop for 2 weeks, and I've gotten maybe halfway through the story. And that's even on roleplay mode. Like, and some of these characters, you know, you have the drive to make a new character, try something out. Like I'm doing a cyborg run now. There's like a kind of a halfway mark in the game, and it still takes multiple days to get there. Like real life, like I'm playing every night. Cause you know, if you're not careful, like those goat men have machine guns, and that robot's got a laser that is out of phase with this dimension, and it's going to kill your ghost, which means you die because you don't have a ghost anymore. Like, you can make these things up, and it's just, yeah, that's a thing in the game. I recently caught a fungal infection that made my body start forming mouths that whispered secrets to me. And part of the fungal cure is I had to collect a certain corpse of a worm from deep underground, mix it with a vial of flaming sap, and then drink it. I mean, if you can get the plague monochrome, and part of the cure for that is you have to hit yourself in the eyes with a flashbang. It's just a bonkers game. And between the handwritten stuff and the Markov chain predictive text procedural gen stuff, which is honestly quite effective, this game is not like really any other. And given that it's had a new UI update, and I feel it is very playable. You find, you go through the control settings and figure out what you want to do. It is an experience that I think a lot of people should have. Most people, they're going to bounce off it. Because like I said, the first time I played it, and this is even my kind of game, I did bounce off of it because I didn't play it the way the game wanted me to. Mm-hmm. Some games you need to do that.
You didn't get it yet.
It just, I wasn't aware of what I was getting into.
Yeah.
Right. It's like going into a mall and going into the first store and being like, this is it. And you're like, no, there's a whole other section of this thing that you haven't even looked at yet. Right. You haven't even seen the food court yet. But yeah, it's got a very simple but effective crafting system, a whole cooking system where you collect bits from creatures or plants and they can have random effects. And it's got a skill tree and all the classic kind of roguelike and RPG elements. It's very fantastic. Faction, you can be friendly with a faction or anger them, and you can play that off of each other. And yeah, it's an amazing game. And Caves of QUD, look it up. It's cheap, and it is worth trying in the same way that Roller Coaster Tycoon and Halo and Half-Life 2 are trying. They are cornerstones of game development, and this is severely underrated. So,
yeah, I feel the only hang up people are going to have is just the graphics.
Yeah,
it's an unfortunate.
It's like
thing.
an 8-bit kind of graphics looking game, but you just got to get over it.
Yeah.
The music, the soundtrack is amazing, and you got to take the time to read the dialogue and look through your quests and pay attention to the description of enemies. It is very Elden Ring, Dark Souls in that way. I could just pull up a random description of one of the enemies, and you get an idea for how the writing in this game works. Like if I look up, what's a Gersh Myrmidon? It is a creature of immensity mounting the upper eye line. Star gas boils off their coral spines, and a tail blown to fin width by the selection pressures of water waves around the unit circle. A cloud of sea fungi suffocating and popping on their vast sucking gills. And finally, residual light churning under the TX glass skin is filtered in an auroral hue and radiates out of body in lituous spirals. That is the kind of writing you find in this game that's just bizarre and evocative, and everything is described like that. And it is right up my alley, and hopefully it's up yours. It's worth trying. Check it out.
Well, that sounds awesome. Speaking of things that are hard to understand until you experience them, Josh, you have another thing to talk about.
Another cornerstone of gaming. I mean, guys, it's been played on bank ATMs. It's been played on calculators. It's been played on games inside of games. Mm-hmm. I'm, of course, talking about Doom. Doom has now been put on Dogecoin. You can play Doom on Dogecoin.
I don't even know what that means.
I know.
I've been reading this article for 2.5 hours, and I'm not sure what that fucking means. Now, there's things called dogonals. Now, dogonals are derived from ordinals, which started on Bitcoin. Now, this is the ability to put in things like images, music, and text into the blockchain. And that's exactly what they did with Doom. They put the first 9 levels of Doom into the blockchain, and you can just play Doom on Dogecoin. It doesn't require any, it's a so-called shareware. It doesn't require any outside systems or networks. It just comes from the Dogecoin blockchain. It's there forever in the blockchain.
So I have a vague layman's term understanding of how the blockchain works, right? Every time there's an action performed in the market of a blockchain, it is recorded in a file that everyone has access to that shows the entire history of the transactions and changes of that particular blockchain, right? So somehow they've encoded Doom into the blockchain, but somehow can you play it?
You can play it.
You can play it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just reading the code from the blockchain and then compiling it so that you can then play it. Okay. It's just
so this is a way to like initially it's of course just Dogecoin and Bitcoin and things like that trying to increase the value of their cryptocurrency by because it can do there's more things, it can do new things. So this is a fairly new thing in the blockchain ecosystem. But one of the things I immediately thought of is blockchains are forever. Everyone has access to it. You can see it there. This could be did these assholes just stumble onto a way to preserve old video games?
I mean, it's preservation. It's a huge topic, but like things are only preserved for as long as they're preserved.
Yeah,
right? Blockchain is forever as long as someone is keeping
it going. Right?
Blockchain. Right. So
I don't know. It's just like it's certainly neat, and Doom has yet again made it onto something new.
Yes.
I feel like it's safe. Doom is one of those things that I don't think Doom is going to realistically disappear for another 100 years.
No, yeah.
Like it's so easy to put Doom up on any potato that can run a fucking screen and has at least one button to play on. The people, it's like a rite of passage to put Doom on some new piece of hardware, right? You know,
if it's got a screen on it, somebody's put Doom on it already.
Yeah. It's neat. I don't think it's necessarily like a publicity stunt, but what is it? Apparently it gave them like a 10% bump.
Yeah, I mean,
cryptocurrency price.
I've been looking at Doge, and it saw a rise. It did, and it hasn't gone back to its previous lows. So yeah, I mean, it did. It seems like it did add some value to Dogecoin potentially.
I mean, value.
Yeah,
circus.
I made my money on Dogecoin while it was hot.
Yeah. That's a whole thing.
I don't know. I was reading it, and I was so perplexed about it. I wanted to share it with y'all, and guys, look into it a little bit. It's fucking nuts. What can't Doom run on? Apparently,
it's definitely neat. Yeah.
I desperately need to use the bathroom. I'm gonna go do that, and I'll be back. Go ahead and continue, gentlemen.
Yeah, let's go ahead. So we'll take a second to kind of pause here from the traditional video game tango news and just riff for a minute. So I've been playing. I play a lot of DayZ, right? I do a lot of DayZ TikToks as well.
Okay.
And I have been just like hyper enjoying. So TikTok for me has always been this thing where I just go to my For You page and I scroll endlessly. Yeah. And the other day I was like, I really need to subscribe or follow or whatever it is to my favorite creators on Twitch, like my favorite DayZ creators. I really enjoyed like the curation that came from that, just getting all their highlights and clips. And then, man, I just started looking to like other games that I enjoy. And dude, I have never used the search function in TikTok unless I'm trying to like show somebody a TikTok that I saw previously that I forgot to like save or whatever.
Somehow,
yeah. Dude, TikTok is a great resource for video games. Like it really is.
Honestly, for lots of stuff that you want to try and like learn in a couple of minutes.
Totally. But yeah, running into like video game factoids and like video game history, and dude, so I've been having kind of a blast the last few days because like my For You page is really random and it gets me. It knows that I like funny stuff. And I get a lot of like really funny bombastic TikToks, and that's the majority of what I see and what I get. But like actually looking up video games recently, like, dude, it's kind of changed how I use TikTok. Like I even non-gaming related content, I just started looking up bands that I like. and like getting the information early, or like there's people that literally just TikTok when Chevelle has a sale on their merch store. That's something that I'm kind of into, not gonna lie. When I can get merch from my favorite band at a discounted price, and
That's
somebody on
always nice.
TikTok lets me know, that's nice. So like, yeah, dude, my TikTok curation just like
Leveled up.
yeah, it really did. Because now I'm getting TikToks that aren't just like entertaining, but also really informative, but in things that I'm already into. So yeah, I don't know. I've been enjoying it quite a bit. So I just like we don't really talk things outside of like the gaming sphere. And while this is like tangentially gaming related, at least it started that way. Man, TikTok is sometimes useful.
My TikTok is mostly Star Wars stuff, video game stuff, and biffed nards.
Yeah, mine's like 90% biff nards, because I really just react to the funny stuff, and that's always what I save. Like every now and then something informative pops up, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty good information. I'll save that for later. But my TikTok For You page knew the kind of content that I was expecting from it, which was all just like short laughs, right? The kind of stuff that gets stuck in your head sometimes, like. That joke recurs often.
Can I pet that dog?
Yeah, can I bet that dog? Exactly, that kind of thing. But and that's what it's been serving me. But like, I never tried to use TikTok for curation at all. It just kind of did it for me. But now that I've actually given it some input,
It's helping.
yeah, it's actually really cool. Because like I haven't been using TikTok for a while now. Like I open the app very rarely. But lately, like the last couple nights, it's what I've been going to bed to, is just scrolling TikTok for a little while, but through a better curated, less nonsensical version of the TikTok that I know. So it's been nice. Anyways, Nick's back. We
Hello.
all have some stuff to talk about this. Let's talk about Palworld for a little while. Josh,
Palworld.
why? Because you have some stats for us. Why don't you go ahead and share those first?
So, Palworld came out in early access on January 18th, and since then has sold like 7 million copies on Steam. Now, really, it's only the numbers from Steam that are out, because Xbox and Gamepass haven't put up their numbers yet.
Yeah.
But 7 million copies sold on Steam amounts to approximately $189 million in sales in roughly 5 days. I mean, that's
with Xbox and Game Pass, probably 250 million.
so that's I mean, that's pretty crazy. And
That's a $250 million. Yes,
As
that's
of
crazy.
as of yesterday, it was when it first dropped, it unseated Fortnite for a little while as like the most popular, most played game for a hot second. So that is saying something. But currently, it is more popular than Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, and PUBG Battlegrounds. So I mean, it is beating some heavy hitters in the gaming industry right now. So I mean, that in itself is interesting for Pokemon with guns.
Yeah.
Where do we want to start this? What do we want to talk about?
Well, I'll talk about my experience with it so far.
You played it a little
Yeah,
bit.
you've played it, right?
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to play it until earlier today. So I only got like 5 to 6 hours of gameplay in, but I feel like I got far enough to understand what the gameplay loop is and what it's going to be. Palworld is interesting because like we've been following it sort of. It's a game that we've been looking forward to because it looks really novel. And we wanted to see, what it looked like. It looks like a caricature of Pokemon, like an almost like Western caricature of Pokemon. And I was thinking it was like this kind of narrative driven RPG for lack of knowledge. I was very much surprised when it landed. Now I did watch a couple Twitch streams on it before playing it, but just really short streams here and there. So I didn't get a handle of it from just the Twitch streams. But when I jumped in, I was really surprised because the first thing it has you do is pick up some sticks and some rocks, a la Minecraft or any survival game. And I was like, okay, well that's interesting. And then it has me build a workbench. Okay, I started getting recipes for like base building, and I'm like, okay, well that's really interesting. I didn't see that happening. And that happens within the first few minutes. I knew that I was going to be doing some kind of Pokemon-style battling, or at least acquisition of Pokemon-style creatures. That happens really early on. You learn how to create your first PAL sphere early on for capturing your first PAL. And, I started doing that a little bit, captured my first few PALs, started using them in combat, getting a feel for how that feels. And then started base building, and then from there it expanded into more, like, we went from essentially survival crafter to some Pokemon to some like base building heavy survival crafter to what I would almost call like a Breath of the Wild open world experience. And we'll talk more on that later. But like very quickly, I was given like 3 or 4 distinctly different games. So after I got done doing my, bumming around the world for a little while, like Breath of the Wild style, came back to my base with all of the new levels I had acquired, all of my new pals that I had acquired, and a knowledge for the landscape and some of the new mechanics. And started putting my pals to work, where it becomes kind of a Stardew Valley like for a little while. You're doing a lot of the work as far as, acquiring more logs, acquiring more stone, food, cooking, and etc. And then I really started to understand that, well, okay, my pals are supposed to be doing this, so I'm supposed to be automating this. Okay, well, now I'm seeing that this automation leads to more acquisition, which leads to more automation, which leads to more acquisition. Oh, the more powerful my pals are, the more abilities they have, the better they do at their given task. Okay, well, some pals are better at some tasks than others. So this pal that looks like a mushroom, he plants seeds for me. Okay, well, my little penguin dude, he waters my crops. And then I have another one that actually harvests the crops. Oh, I've got one that also helps me in my crafting. Oh, that's interesting. So I can start blueprints for a new building at the base, and some of my pals will become involved, where I would normally have to sit there for a little while and hammer away at setting up my building. My pals are, so I essentially leave a blueprint for them now, and the work gets done. That part is now automated for me. And I was really thrown back by a lot of that because it just really wasn't what I expected. So now that we know what I expected and versus what I got, as far as my take on the game goes, it's interesting. I don't know that I would necessarily call it good. I do need to spend more time with it before I make a final decision on whether I really like the game or not. But it did. I mean, as most games will do, especially in the beginning, is I'm hooked. I'm looking forward to playing more. For me, will this game have legs? I don't know. I tend to stay away from open world games like this for the most part. But it's interesting. I definitely didn't expect a survival crafter
kind of
satisfactory Pokemon Breath of the Wild.
Kind of sounds like its game loop is more akin to like Ark Survival than Pokemon or something more in that. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I've seen some of the screenshots of the monsters.
They
is. look Pokemon-y, but it definitely has like that crafting survival. Get your guys, build the base,
It does
exploring the world. So yeah.
There is progression in that, like, in order to build some of the buildings that I need ancient knowledge or something, which is relatively rare. You have to acquire that by killing bosses. There are bosses sprinkled throughout the areas that I've been. I did try the first boss fight. It was too difficult for me at my level with the pals that I had. I assumed that I need to power up myself a little bit in both, the level of my pal or the mixture of pals that I take with me, and maybe my own level and equipment before I face this first boss. I also noticed that it said that you could queue up with up to 4 other people. So it may be that boss isn't quite tuned for just an individual without being a little maybe over leveled for the boss. This game would be really interesting to play in multiplayer. Now, as far as the Game Pass version goes, which is the one that I'm playing, you do have to effectively have a host that sends out invite codes to other people using the Game Pass version. And as far as I know right now, the Game Pass version is not intercompatible with the Steam version because they are two different versions of the game. The Steam version does have the same feature, but also allows you to host your own server. So there are two distinctly different versions out right now. I am playing the Game Pass version. I don't know yet that I would pay for a Steam version.
They have actually released an updates roadmap of sorts. So currently, they're addressing numerous bugs that have been identified and prioritizing those fixes.
Yeah.
So like some of those would be like the world date may experience rollbacks and the loading screen may persist when you're trying to load into a new place. So on a couple of those things. But the planned future updates are PvP, raid bosses, so end-game content, PAL Arena, PvP for pals, Steam and Xbox crossplay, and then various Xbox features, whatever the heck that means. But they have released a new a roadmap of sorts. So they're going after server transfers, server transfers and mitigations, improvements to the building system, new islands, pals, bosses, and technologies. So I mean, they're looking ahead. They feel this is going well.
Yeah, they need to. Well, and this is early access, so there should be more fixes and content coming, later. Am I enjoying myself? Yes, I am. I am enjoying myself. I think playing it with a couple friends would probably be of benefit to me. I do feel like it was meant to be played with more than one person on the map in consideration. So, getting some people into my world, I think, is the next step that might elevate this game to a place where I have a more definitive, answer on do I like this game or not. But so far so good. It feels a little disjointed in that it has so many systems going at the same time that it's a little overstimulating at times. None of the systems feel fantastic, but they all do feel well implemented. They're fine. They don't do anything new. Like there isn't a thing that I talked about that is new here. It feels like Rust. It feels like Pokemon. It feels like Breath of the Wild.
Do we want to talk about this on the meta level for a second?
Sure. Yeah, please.
Okay. So this is made by Pocketpair. Pocketpair is a Japanese company. As far as I can tell, they have between like 10 and maybe a couple dozen employees. They've been making games for a little while. They have made 3 games, including Palworld. All 3 of the games are currently in early access. Their second game, Craftopia, which I found the most information on, was released in 2020 with the tags of open world crafting survival multiplayer game. And having watched the trailer for it, this looks not only so much like Palworld and so much like Breath of the Wild, it's a little mind-boggling. Reading the recent reviews, this game has been languishing in content besides bug fixes for quite a while. People very nonplussed and chagrined at the release of Palworld, giving the state of Craftworld. And from what we've seen, what you've talked about, and what I've seen of the game, a couple hours of gameplay, it seems like Pocketpair has finally achieved what they attempted to do with their last few games, which is take the working, extensive, bulky systems from games that are very popular, whether that's the way that Pokemon work in Pokemon, the way that the UI UX leveling up and RPG mechanics of Arc work, or the open world exploration design and font and theme of Breath of the Wild, and mash those together roughly into one game in an attempt to capture a wide audience with a large amount of upfront content that seems new and novel, because we have honed the Breath of the Wild or the Pokemon or the Ark experience over the last few decades to a point where there's so much to quote unquote do and explore. There's always a new power to catch, a new corner to turn around, a new skill to unlock to better efficientize or automate your base. That these are the kind of games that are very heavily front loaded with seemingly a lot of content.
Yeah.
And what they've managed to do, and kudos to them, is find a winning mashup of these elements with seemingly store-bought assets, or at the very least, low effort ways to tie these systems together. My brother and I were reading an article where some of the devs were, when they first started making this game, they didn't know what the concept of rigging a model was.
Mm-hmm.
They are using a lot of pre-done stuff, which isn't the end of the world. It's fine. I feel like everyone's got an opinion on early access, and it's too broad of a conversation to boil down to a conversation right now.
Yeah.
But I feel that Palworld managed to do one of two things, and they're both sides of a coin. One, they slapdash together a game on the third attempt that is going to feel great for the first 10, 20, 30 hours of play for the majority of people, and then it's going to wear off. Two, they've managed to slapdash together the good qualities of games that some people are absolutely going to love. I don't think Palworld is a bad game. I think it is a game that has none of its own identity, to the point where there's quite a bit of talk online about obvious personal human level egregious copy and paste of other content.
Yeah.
But to the point where, like, I've seen articles about them asking lawyers, hey, is this worthy of a lawsuit?
Yeah.
Like, between Breath of the Wild and Pokemon and Ark and a few other things, this is, they have shaved off the corners of everything enough that there's reasonably, as far as I can tell, no room for a lawsuit unless Nintendo decides just to throw money at it to bankrupt them. But yeah, I don't think this is, talking from my experience as a middle-aged gamer who's played a lot of games like this, the core gameplay loop is capturing Pokemon, as you do in Pokemon, so that you're more efficient at base building, to level up faster, to get better Pokemon, right? There's no overarching narrative. There are no amazing new realms to explore. There's no fundamental gameplay changes after the first few hours. You are going to be cycling your hamster wheel like you do in most generic survival crafting games for the purpose of cycling your hamster wheel. I could be wrong. Maybe late game, especially later on, given this is, again, quote unquote early access, they're going to be adding in a narrative and really cool and amazing environments. As it stands now, it's kind of hard to argue it, though, because it's $30. Like, $30 isn't a lot of money.
Yeah.
It is money. It's not a $5 game. It's not a $10 game, but it's not a $60 fucking Ubisoft game. Like, I would be much happier being quote unquote ripped off by this game than I would by some fucking Assassin's Creed game that cost me $70 plus a $20 battle pass plus a $30 Ultimate Edition for something that I got bored of in 5 to 10 hours, right? So I don't really know where I sit in this game, other than, like, I applaud them for finding a way to mash all these elements together. I scold them for not trying to make their own game. But who am I to talk? I'm one guy. These games sold 7 million copies. Clearly, there's an audience for survival crafting combined with what is a novel version of Pokemon. Like, how many years have everybody been clamoring for a Pokemon where it's like, I want to do stuff too. Let me be involved. Like, and you can do that. Like, it's like Ark. You can shoot that to be Pokemon while your Pokemon are fighting them. Maybe that's all it takes for some people. Like, I want this to feel real. I don't want it to be turn-based. I don't want it to be, removed from a layer of reality. Maybe there's a lot of people that can't afford Breath of the Wild. They can't own a Switch. And this is like Genshin Impact, right? Like, you get to experience a similar enough game without having to pay all the money for an official first-party Nintendo title, right? Maybe people love Ark, but they hate Ark because Ark is Ark, and you want to love Ark, and you go to play it, and you're like, oh, shit, I'm playing Ark.
Yeah.
But they're like, okay, here's just a more manageable version of Ark where shit's automated for you. So a lot of different takes from me, other than, like, I don't know how to feel about it, other than I've seen enough of it that I immediately lost interest. Like, I was very excited, and then I watched about 3 hours of it from a couple different YouTubers, and I was like, okay, I know exactly what kind of game this is going to be. And that's how it's panned out, which is fine. But that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Listen, I'm having fun with it. I don't, again, and I've used this expression a few times. I don't know if it has legs for me. It doesn't have the formula. Like, it has a losing formula in my mind, just for my own enjoyment. That said, I've already put more time into it than I thought I would. I'm looking forward to playing some more of it. I do think it's done some things pretty well. When I found out that I was gearing up for my first boss fight, and that would give me my next thing to unlock the new thing, so I can start doing another thing that's going to unlock more things. I don't know. I think it has enough breadcrumbs, at least in this early game, that it's going to keep me interested for a while. Clearly, like, the numbers have spoken. Right now, it's number 1 on Twitch. Only, it's number 2 on Twitch, but it's only Just Chatting is ahead of it. Which Just Chatting is almost always number 1 on Twitch. It's beating out League of Legends. It's beating out Grand Theft Auto 5, which has a new RP server that's going hard right now.
It's also like a 10-year-old game.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, though, Enshrouded is number 5, so that is something we should probably look into.
If we want to talk
we've talked about it.
Open world survival crafting games that do have quote unquote legs, that are cooked in their own juices and
they have identity.
Stuff. Valheim not only has had the recent Mistlands update last year, but they're gearing up for the Ashlands update in probably the next 6 months. They just had a dev diary where they talked and walked in game, talked about their stuff, showed off some of the new monsters. And Outlands, is that the name of the new one? You just mentioned it. Outlands?
Oh no, Enshrouded.
Enshrouded is something we saw in that Games Demo Fest of December or November it was.
Yeah.
That I really it looked exciting to me. It's like, here's essentially another solid take on the Valheim genre, but with its own twist and its own kind of unique mechanics. And I'm seeing a lot of praise for the building system, which now that this newest iteration of survival crafting games has worked out the kinks of building mechanics. Like, my brother and I are playing through Valheim. We're blazing through it as fast as we can. I have all the settings turned. You can carry shit through portals, like, skill loss on death, but shit's still clearly rough. Like 8 ingots to make a knife. Like, this kinds of shit that we've learned in survival crafting games. You're just making me do busy work.
Yeah.
Right. And Palworld gets away with that. Like, you have your pals do your busy work for you. Sure, the first hour or two, you're doing a lot of it manually, but very quickly, if you're trying, you can get all your pals to do the majority of the work for you.
Fortunately, the manual grinding early on is not too bad.
It depends on the player. Like, I watched 3 different streamers. One of them, it took them quite a while to realize the concept of my pals should be doing this. Like, to the point where they're having to edit their video because, like, I need to spend 5 minutes crafting all these arrows. Other ones picked up on it right away. Like, I think it's just going to depend on the person to realize, oh, I'm clearly not supposed to be doing this. The game's letting me, but it's not telling me that I should be having my pals do it.
I think, I found out early on that my pals could do it, but I also think that the game actually does drive you to learn that fairly early. So that may have just been like, their own hang up or something. Because but even before I started getting my pals involved, you gotta manually get all of your wood collection and stuff before you can start building a base. Fortunately, that didn't take very long. It's like 1 or 2 trees that you have to take down before you can make your first 2x2. It's not too much work.
Final word for me, with 8 million players out there, there's ungodless amounts of hours of content of people playing it out there. Do yourself a favor and watch at least an hour and a half of it, just to get an idea for, like, this is going to be 95% of the game.
Yeah.
If that intrigues you, grab it. It's $30. Like, it's not that big of a deal.
Or it's on Gamepass. Or if you already have Gamepass.
I looked at the reviews posted on Gamepass of it a few, 2 days after it launched, and they were great. They'll probably get those worked out. It's first day jitters. I think you were saying the only difference between Game Pass and Steam is that you can't host a dedicated server. Don't quote me on that. But as far as we know, they're vaguely similar enough. I don't think there's crossplay.
There is not,
because there are different versions of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you got someone in your life that is intrigued by it, like, and you want to crossplay it, just get it on their platform and try it out.
And I'm gonna be playing it on Game Pass with my friend and her kid tomorrow night. I think that'll be a great game for the three of us to play. I think it's to give it its credit, it's really accessible. You know, with
that entire, it's good depending on the person. Like, if your kid should be playing this game past the first few hours, but that's depending on the parent.
Yeah, they probably won't get the race or the prejudicial undertones. So, you know, I think it'll be fine. They'll just see these factory workers.
The game edges on problematic.
Yeah, it does for sure. Yeah, no, there are certainly adult themes, but I think it's the same kind of adult themes that like SpongeBob has, right? Like,
no,
you know.
no.
Well,
there is no human enslavement and plantation owners in
but
SpongeBob.
I mean, some things adults will get, and I think a lot of it will go over the kids' heads. So.
I mean, a cute fox shooting someone with an AK-47.
I already plays Fortnite.
Yeah, I mean,
they already have that in Fortnite.
Again, yeah, it depends on the family.
Yeah,
like this isn't Pokemon. Don't get it conflated.
No, it's not.
There is some wildly messed up shit in this game.
Oh yeah, so. Yeah. What is Palworld rated?
E for everyone.
Whether you like it or not. We have put our foot down. I don't know.
I actually don't.
ESRB.
I don't see ESRB rating on it. So.
I thought they got shut down due to like health outbreak or something.
Well, they should.
COVID destroyed them.
Yeah, they should. Jack, whatever his name is dead. They don't need the ESRB anymore.
Palworld's all the rage. Look it up.
Yeah, check it out.
Check it out before you buy it for sure.
It's got 133 viewers on Twitch. Just join one of those.
If you haven't played an overworld crafting game, get Valheim first.
Get Valheim.
Get Factorio first. Look up I keep saying Enshrouded. Enshrouded.
Satisfactory.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great games.
Yeah. The Raft. The Raft is in its full final release. Fantastic game.
Play more DayZ.